The Target building, which is the major tenant building. A vicinity map is shown on the screen for reference. The architecture is in line with the Target brand and is accented by its Target red color. The remainder of the building is a gray color scheme with a stone veneer and a metal awning. And then they're proposing niche wood panel accents. This is north elevation is the primary frontage for this building. They continue the gray color scheme to the south and west elevation with some accents of red as well. As part of the architecture for the multi-tenant building, which is highlighted in yellow in the vicinity map, they are proposing a contemporary style with a neutral color scheme. Incorporated into the building are varying roof lines and articulation, and the building is accented by gabled and pitched roofs and a stone veneer. The same style is carried to the south and west elevations as well. And then for a coherent look, the architectural style is carried to the Shops 2 building as well as Pad A architecture. The remaining buildings will follow the same architecture or the corporate brand architecture of future tenants. As noted earlier, the applicant is proposing a sign program as well. This is to allow 2 monument signs and 2 pylon signs along Oak Valley Parkway, a freeway-oriented pylon sign to the west of the property, and design guidelines for Pad A, Major 2, Shops 1 and 2, and Retail 1, which are highlighted in the light brown. The freeway-oriented sign will be 60 feet in height and provide on-site signage for tenants. The sign is held by 2 columns and accented by stone veneer. The 2 pylons are proposed at 20 feet in height and will have a similar design as a freeway-oriented sign. And then 2 monument signs at 6 feet in height are provided as well. Signage for these signs will also be for on-site tenants. Other provisions of the sign program include wall placement and sign height limitations. All of these signs will require a separate sign permit application with the Planning and Building Department. The Target, which has a grocery store component, will be applying for a Type 1 and Type 86 ABC license, and then another grocer will apply for a Type 20 license. As described in the staff report, this would exceed the allowable number of off-sale licenses and therefore requires a PCN finding. This is justified due to the nature of the use, which is grocery stores. The site is not located within 600 feet of a public or private school, public park, nor place of worship. It is also not within 100 feet of a residence, thus the project meets the distance requirements provided by ABC. So the project, it does qualify for a 15183 exemption, projects consistent with a community planner zoning. An analysis is included as attachment A and has found that the project is consistent with the 2020 general plan EIR and a previously certified project EIR at the same project site. As described in the staff report, the project is consistent with the MSHCP and will convey to RCA approximately 23 acres of conservation. I will now turn it over to Rob Steele, our economic development consultant.
Good evening, Rob Steele. I'm an economic development consultant to the city. Been with the city approximately 1 year. I was originally engaged, I think, to bridge the staffing until you have your full complement of economic development professionals that you now have. And this was one of the projects that was delegated to me to make sure that it moved forward through the process. I have a brief slide presentation on development agreements. We start with who are you entering into a development agreement with? AVG Partners LLC is the underlying landowner. They own that large site that Melody showed a few minutes ago. At the corner of Oak Valley Parkway and the I-10 freeway. Their partner, joint venture partner, is Regency Centers. They're a national owner of shopping centers, developer of shopping centers. Generally speaking, community-oriented shopping centers, either grocery, drug anchored, or in this case, as you've seen, a Target grocer anchored shopping center. They have a substantial portfolio of these shopping centers throughout California and the nation, and they're well suited to undertake this project. So what is a development agreement? They were authorized by government code, by statutes of the state of California, and also by a city-adopted resolution 1987-34. A development agreement is a contract, a voluntary contract between a city and an applicant. And the goal is to provide benefits to both parties. Certainty has value to developers, knowing what your rules and regulations you're subject to, what development impact fees you're subject to. As you know, kind of time is money as well, so those are all very important elements of the value exchange between the city and the developer. One thing that the development agreement does is it vests the land use approvals that you're considering this evening. Those become what we call the project approvals, and the city is obligated to apply those rules to this project, notwithstanding any future changes you might make or citizens might make through a referenda or initiatives. So it locks in the rules and regulations for this particular project. That doesn't apply to every project, so that's, in that respect, it's unique, and one of the main reasons why development agreements are used. The city, because it mitigates the developer's risk, is usually entitled to some form of compensation. That compensation can take the form of actual cash, a development agreement fee sometimes. Other times it's basically the project itself that the city's after. So the revenues, the jobs, the goods and services that come with the project that are most important to the city. And I would say it's that last component that this project development agreement is basically negotiated for, is the city wants the new goods and services that the shopping center provides, along with the jobs and the sales tax and property tax revenues. The project scope, I think Melody covered this, so I won't bore you with more details, but 230,000 square feet is what the phase one project is. Includes a 148,000 square foot Target, a 24,000 square foot grocery store, and then the ancillary shop space that was presented of about 58,000 square feet. Target will build its store under a ground lease, so the developer will improve the site, all the horizontal improvements, and then deliver the site to Target, and they will do the vertical component of the construction. Regency will build the remainder of the center under build-to-suit leases or ground leases with other pad users. So they may, on a smaller scale, lease pads to restaurateurs, fast food restaurants, coffee shops, what have you, for some of the out parcels. And then there is a future phase two plan on that western side of the project. You may have seen Major 3 on the map. That would be a future phase, hopefully not too far behind completion of the first phase of the project. Regency intends to grade the entire site, make some of the backbone infrastructure improvements, detention basins, retention walls along the flood control channels. So you'll see work commence on the entire site, but the primary horizontal and vertical improvements will be on the phase one site only. This bears repeating the entitlements you're considering this evening, and you can see there's several of them. As I mentioned in the first slide, all of these entitlements that you grant, the conditions of approval become part of the project approvals, and those are the only rules that can apply to this project, with some exceptions. We don't accept them from the building code, for instance, or the fire code. If there are any changes to the uniform codes, they're still subject to those. So there are certain reservations of authority that the city retains. But by and large, the setbacks and the development standards are all encompassed within the project approvals. There is a proposal for a digital display that would promote both on and off-site advertising. And as it's my understanding that under the Beaumont Municipal Code, that is considered a billboard. A section of your code does not provide for billboards that advertise off-site. Regency, as part of their request under the development agreement, requested relief from that prohibition and asked for permission for one digital display board to be located near the I-10 freeway to capture the traveling public. They are required to procure all permits from other agencies that may have jurisdiction, so Caltrans, for instance. will probably have jurisdiction. And they will agree to hold us harmless and indemnify us from any claims that may arise from those applications. What the development agreement does, and you will adopt, or the city council will adopt the development agreement by ordinance. It is a legislative act, so they will use that vehicle to waive that prohibition on the digital display board for this particular location. So it won't apply citywide. It'll be unique to this location and in exchange for the benefits that will derive from this project. The developer must submit an application to the planning department for that approval. It will, as I understand it, come before this planning commission with conditions. And it is what is defined in the development agreement as a subsequent discretionary approval, so it's not guaranteed. They have to meet the criteria and the conditions that you set forth after your proper consideration. So locationally, that's the approximate sign location on that parcel closest to the freeway there. And this is a conceptual plan. It is non-dimensioned. Again, it hasn't been formally submitted to the city, but you see the digital display board there at the top, just below the branding for the city of Beaumont, and then the branding for the shopping center below. And then I believe those will be placard positions for tenants that are located on the project site. This is a pretty simple development agreement compared to most. The basic terms are that it becomes effective when the ordinance adopting the development agreement becomes effective. So that's usually first reading, second reading of the city council, and then 30 days thereafter. The owner has to acquire fee title of the property. Right now, they're partners, but Regency does not own the property. And we put an outside date of June 30th, 2026. So basically, they have 1 year to acquire the property in order for the development agreement to become effective. And they plan to be much more efficient than that, but that is an outside date for the purposes of the agreement. The term of the agreement is 10 years, so that's the lock period on those vesting privileges I mentioned on the land use entitlements. And there is a mutual option for 1 5-year extension. Typically, we try to provide adequate time for them to complete the construction of the project, and 10 years is probably more than enough for them to complete their planned project, both phases 1 and 2. But it does provide them some cushion in case things get delayed. Not to repeat FES entitlements for the term of the development agreement. The main incentive here on the city's part is that the city is agreeing to reimburse the partnership for the cost of Oak Valley Parkway public improvements. Those include 5 intersections, 5 signalized intersections, all of the half-width improvements along Oak Valley Parkway, and all the incidental improvements that go with that, undergrounding utilities, installing or relocating utilities that may need to be upsized. So all of the work within the public right-of-way will be widened to the general plan standards, and through lanes of traffic will be established so there's no bottleneck east of the site. So customers have convenient access to the site. All the signals hopefully are operational and synchronized so that it improves the customer access to the shopping center. And for folks that are not accessing the shopping center, helps them get through the shopping center. And importantly, the developer will pay all the applicable development impact fees. So this reiterates the scope of work that I just mentioned. So there's 5 signals. There's 1 project driveway that's mentioned, and they will have to make some widening improvements at that location. No signal as I understand it, but there are 6 intersections in effect that are being improved and are subject to the reimbursement from the city. And again, undergrounding utilities, a very significant cost, taking the overhead lines there along Oak Valley Parkway and putting them underground to the extent of the phase 2 project, the phase 1 and phase 2 project. And any ancillary overhead lines, cable, fiber optic that may be there, all will go underground. The estimated hard cost of those improvements was $7.6 million. So that doesn't include design work, project management, what we normally consider soft costs. So the actual costs of the project are probably in the mid-8s, I'm guessing, somewhere around there, to the developer. And they've agreed to accept a $6 million maximum reimbursement from the city for the cost of that work. So Again, just pointing out the scope of the improvements, the 5 intersections that are involved. You'll see the 3 kind of project-related intersections there in the middle. There's 2 at the wings, 1 at Elm and 1 at Desert Lawn. Those are unimproved, non-signalized intersections at the moment, so they will install new traffic signals and make all of the intersection improvements at those locations. Even though those weren't on the project site, they're off the site, and they were required by the traffic study that was performed by the applicant. So the reimbursement agreement is a form exhibit to the development agreement. It's the sort of the nuts and bolts that dictates how the city is going to reimburse the $6 million. It will be added to the city CIP and budget. That is our requirement of the development agreement. And the city agrees to reimburse Regency for the actual costs, and it's important to note it's the actual cost of improvement when they've substantially completed those public improvements. So the Public Works Director will have to sign off that the work is complete, substantially complete. The on-site improvements are substantially complete, so all the flat work and the vertical work that's required by the development agreement. And that's basically that certificates of occupancy have been issued for not less than 50,000 square feet. And of that 50,000 square feet, I think 23 or 20,000 square feet has to be one of the anchors. So it'll probably be the grocery store anchor, has to be a component part of that 50,000 square feet. So at least a portion of the shopping center that Regency controls, the vast majority of what they control will be vertical. And then hopefully the other uses come online as well. The Target's the largest at 148,000 square feet, obviously, and that should follow shortly thereafter. There is a provision in state law that unless, or it is, the city can only reimburse for the actual costs of public improvements that are granted as a condition of regulatory approval. So you will be conditioning them tonight to make all those improvements. If we only reimburse for those actual costs, then they only have to pay prevailing wages on the public improvements. So all the Oak Valley Parkway improvements, they will be required to comply with some components of the public contracting code and the prevailing wage statutes. But their private improvements, the vertical structures of the shops, the Target, any of the pad users are not subject to the prevailing wage requirements. And that was one of the major negotiating objectives of the two parties, was to avoid burdening the project with prevailing wages, because that would be a substantial incremental cost to the developer and probably render it infeasible to develop. The city hasn't decided on exactly how it's going to reimburse Regency just yet, but two potential sources are development impact fees. We've discussed with the developer reimbursement agreement that is a separate reimbursement agreement from the one I just mentioned, but it would reimburse them if other developers pay fair share fees towards certain intersections. And then any other available monies to the city, general fund monies that are available to make the $6 million reimbursement. And what do we get in exchange? Obviously, the expanded goods and services, a general merchandiser, a new specialty grocer, and all the shop space that normally co-tenants with those uses. You get full circulation improvements to Oak Valley Parkway, so you no longer have bottlenecks and unimproved segments of that road, at least on the east side of the I-10 freeway. Approximately 450 full and part-time employment opportunities for phase one. I mentioned the potential for a second major in phase two of 50,000 square feet or so would add additional employees. And then just for phase one, the estimate for sales taxes is $675,000 net per year. Net means that we've made a deduction for cannibalization sales that would be reallocated from existing shopping centers in Beaumont. So that is a net new number to the city that you're not now recognizing. And then property taxes of approximately $100,000 plus or minus a year. And there are some indirect revenue sources that are generated by these two numbers, pool allocations on sales taxes and property taxes in lieu that'll add some additional revenues. So this is sort of a conservative estimate of what the net new revenue should be to the city, but it will be a substantial addition to the city's revenue base. And roughly in terms of timing, entitlements are under consideration this evening. We're expecting the development agreement to be approved in July for second reading. Becomes effective 30 days after that second reading in August. I believe Regency expects to start grading operations in October. Perhaps pull building permits late this year, early next year. The target pulling permits second quarter, late first quarter, early second quarter of next year, and then phase one complete approximately April of 27. I think the second quarter of 2027 is a safe estimate of the expected completion date. So what is the Planning Commission's role with the development agreement? Your role is not to approve the development agreement. Your role is to make these 5 findings and pass that recommendation along to the City Council. So the staff report that you have provides narrative explanation of each of these 5 findings, and I won't repeat them here. But basically, in the broad overview, your role is to make findings that it's consistent with the general plan, that it's consistent with good planning practice, that it's consistent with health and safety of the residents of Beaumont, and won't adversely affect property values in the community. And again, the staff report provides detailed findings of each of these standards. And these are standards that were set forth by the City Council in that resolution 1987-34. I do have one modification to the development agreement I'd like to enter into the record just because it's a significant one. In section 2.71 of the development agreement, page 11, at the very bottom of the page, it has a proviso that the city manager has the authorization to increase the maximum reimbursement amount, that $6 million I discussed, by 10%. However, when we made the offer of $6 million, the intent was that that was a not to exceed amount. So we'd like to strike that one sentence from the development agreement and keep the $6 million as a maximum not to exceed. That'll facilitate the budgeting. We know what our object is in terms of budgeting. So, and I briefly discussed it with the Regency before the meeting, and I make that one amendment with your permission. With that, I will turn it back over to Melody.
So before I go on to the recommendation, we do have some changes to the conditions of approval. So the first one being removing building condition number 60. So per our building official, that's already included in the building code, so they'll comply with that during plan check review. And then I have also provided red lines for sewer conditions 46, 47, and 48. So those are requested changes with the recommendation that I'm going to read right now. So with this, planning staff recommends that the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and approve plot plan PP 2024-0059, sign program plan 2024-0157, variances V 2024-0019, and V 2025-0031, and CEQA exemption subject to the attached conditions of approval with those amendments that I explained, and approve a finding of public necessity, convenience and necessity, direct staff to prepare a notice of exemption for the applicant to file with the Riverside County Clerk Recorder and the State Clearinghouse, and waive the full reading and adopt by title only a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Beaumont recommending that the City Council of the City of Beaumont approve and adopt a proposed development agreement, Plan 2025-0177, by and between the City of Beaumont and Beaumont Regency ABG, subject to the attached conditions of approval. This concludes our report, and staff is available for questions.
I would also like to note that our city attorney is on call in case there are any questions. Ms. Nancy Trafag.
Perfect. Thank you for that report. Do we have any questions from the commission? Commissioner Cueva?
Yes, I have a question, and I'm going to stay away from the development agreement as much as I can, but I know my question may tie into it a little bit. One of the questions is, to start obtaining permits, do they need to have fee title on the property?
I don't believe so. They just need permission from the property owner.
Okay,
That's
so if that's the case, the other part of the question I have is on Oak Valley. I've seen how impacted that can get, and my concern is once they start the horizontal improvements on Oak Valley, is there a time limit that they need to complete those improvements?
The development agreement doesn't have a time limit, but they will need to complete them in order to get their certificates of occupancy. So that they're motivated to get those completed as soon as possible, and they don't get reimbursed either.
No, and I do understand that. I know that a little further down the road, there's residential communities that are being constructed. I know it's not commercial, but I can't tell you how many times that road has been closed or diverted or what have you. I just want to make sure that we don't have this issue once we start opening up Oak Valley to put in the horizontal construction, due to the horizontal construction.
Do you normally have a condition regarding scheduling?
No, so there are no limitations on construction. As Rob had mentioned, the project itself is the incentive. It incentivizes them finishing the roads. We will also have bonds, so if they fail to complete those improvements in a reasonable amount of time, the city has the option to pull the bonds and finish the construction through the city's means.
Okay, and I see in the conditions of approval, condition number 22, prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit, that those street improvements, means all street improvements have to be completed if, let's say, they're working on the major one shopping component of this. Is that correct?
Yeah, the city will inspect those improvements. I think Rob had touched on that as well, and make sure that they are all fully complete and acceptable prior to the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. There may be some deferred improvements. For instance, some of those traffic signals that are remote or off-site, those may be deferred, or through negotiations, the applicant may request other improvements deferred. However, the city will be, a negotiating partner with that and make sure it's not a hindrance to local residents or traffic.
Okay. And then the last question that I have is reducing the parking by 181 parking stalls. And this is where I may touch again. I want to make sure that they don't come back and say, well, we want to reduce an additional X. We've had that come before Planning Commission before, and I just want to make sure 181 is where we're stopping at.
Yeah, so the variance is only for 181. A further reduction would require them to come back to Planning Commission.
Okay. That's all I have. Thanks.
Any other commissioners' questions?
Yes, I have some questions. I don't understand the justification for so many variances. What is the justification for the electronic billboard sign where the city said we don't want them, and now suddenly we're going to grant one applicant a billboard sign, and we've turned it down in the past? We have an ordinance specifically prohibiting that, and would the objection or the refusal for that variance cause the project to fail?
The sign itself is not part of the variance. That's part of the development agreement, and the development agreement as an ordinance is taking that sign and approving it as part of the city's code now, because now it's part of the ordinance. Without that development agreement language, that freeway-oriented sign would not be able to happen because of the city's current prohibition. You're correct, sir. The variances only pertain to the parking and to the open space, but not to the sign.
So if we were to approve this, the sign would not be approved?
If you were to
Would be in
recommend.
limbo.
Yes, the development agreement itself, you're recommending to the council, if your recommendation was, we recommend the development agreement without the sign, you have the right to do that, then it's up to the council to decide whether to take that recommendation or do their own.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Now, I also have a question with the parking. There was some statement about shared parking, but at this point in time, I don't understand, I don't believe that there's any indication of who all the tenants will be. And we saw a recent situation where we agreed to some shared parking. It's an absolute mess. The shared parking didn't work out because the anticipated tenants that they thought they were going to get aren't the tenants they got. And so it appears to me that there's a expectation that there'll be shared parking, but we have no indication of how that shared parking is going to work because we don't know who the tenants are. Would the not allowing the shared parking, the 181, would that cause the project to fail? Is there a change that can be made? Perhaps one of the buildings not be developed? Is this an absolute requirement? And I'd have the same comments and the same things on the open space variance. Why is this variance necessary? Is this a convenience or is this a financial matter for the developer? Why are we, this looks like a list of variances. While I'd love to see this project be approved and completed, it just seems like we're making a lot of concessions that in the past, both the city council and the planning commission have decided these are important items and now we're shuffling them away. I don't want to get caught up in oh, this would be great to have these retailers, but let's cast aside all the planning that we've done in the past.
I'll tell you, sir, in talking to the developer, they've been looking at the site for over 20 years, and it is a financial feasibility issue. Because of the 23 acres of conservation that are required, and overall need to have a certain amount of square footage to make the project feasible economically, they have to really tighten everything up. So the 23 acres, those can't be developed, they have to be conserved. The way the site is configured, it's not a rectangular site completely, so there's different areas that have to be graded to accommodate the configuration of the buildings. So all in all, to make this project work, the city had to step in with this development agreement, identify, hey, we can help out with fee credits, right? And ultimately, this is all the parking that could be begotten. Because again, we also have landscaping standards and minimum parking size standards. So the 181 spaces that we see with the shared parking that's been configured with the type of uses that are there, we figure is very minimal compared to what we're getting in return. And that's why staff feels this can be supported.
Okay, and the open space.
Yes. The open space
The same-
similarly, sir?
The same. Okay.
Same thing because of the configuration of the lot, and again, 23 acres being dedicated to conservation, there's minimal areas. And again, if it was let's say this was just a straight shopping center, a rectangle, it'd be a lot easier to provide that open space. The developer has looked at different options, and every option that they've looked at, they have to meet certain standards for the parking sizes, for the planter sizes.
Well, I
for the number
certainly
of
understand
trees.
that. I've been involved in the development of over 100 shopping malls. And I just don't see where there's that much of an economic value to dropping one of these tenant buildings or one of these tenant spaces, making it smaller. I can't get my hand around the fact that that one reduced rental space is going to collapse this entire economic plan.
What I'd like to offer, sir, is we have the developer here that can answer that question better than I can, I think, in terms of the economics.
Hi, good evening. My name's Chris Sanchez. I'm a Vice President of Development at Regency Centers. And I think Gus is speaking along the correct lines. There's only so much surface area that we can develop. We have a just under 29 acre project, right? We have 280,000 square feet. Typically, retail, surface parked, single story development, our target is 10,000 square feet of building per acre. So we're under that at 280,000 square feet, 29 acres. We tried to maximize parking as best we could and get as close to that 10,000 square feet of building per acre for our coverage, for our returns, for our revenue assumptions. That goes hand in hand with open space. More open space, less parking, right? Less open space on the margin, more parking. So we're trying to balance all of those factors, but I do hear your concerns, Commissioner Cooley.
That's all I have right now.
Commissioner Gold, any questions?
Yes, I have three. On the digital sign by the freeway, has consideration been made, taken into, consideration be in the evening when you have a bright digital sign facing the freeway, both directions, for possible distraction to drivers? That's number one.
Yeah, yes, sir. That will come to you. Right now, it's a conceptual plan, but that type of detail will come to you under a separate application that will be reviewed by the Planning Commission. So yes, right now, there's not that detail provided.
All right, okay, thank you.
Could
Yes.
I just ask a follow-up on that?
Oh, go ahead.
So when it does come back in front of the Planning Commission, would it be correct for me to assume that it has already gone through Caltrans approval so that we can dispense with that question about distracted driving?
It'll likely be a concurrent review, sir, because Caltrans tends to take a little longer. But what the applicant would like to do is get this started right after the DA is executed to come back with the sign proposal. And it'll be in the form of a modification to the sign program. And so that'll come to you, I would say, within the next 3 months at most.
Okay.
But we are encouraging the applicant to get the Caltrans process started sooner than later.
Okay, sorry, Alan, thanks.
Second question, parking. Seems, like a minor issue, but I've seen it pose problems in the past in other centers. What size are the parking spaces? Are they designed for compact cars, full-size cars, SUVs, pickup trucks?
So our code requires 9 by 19 feet for parking stalls, and that's what the applicant is proposing.
And that justifies...
Standard stalls, yeah,
So it justifies a standard SUV?
correct.
Okay, thank you. Last question. The, sorry, I gotta put my glasses back on, sorry. Public convenience and necessity regarding a variance to the alcohol licenses. Across the street on Oak Valley, we have one retailer, the gas station, that sells alcoholic beverages, a bar, and at least 2 restaurants that serve liquor. So I don't understand the public convenience of making it available just on the other side of the street. It's certainly not a necessity to be able to not go on one side of the street versus another. The Rite Aid is out, someone will take its place, and undoubtedly come back to us and ask for approval to have liquor there, as Rite Aid did. But still, we've got over 4 establishments right now, including a bar, and 2 restaurants. I have difficulty finding that to be the justification for public convenience and necessity.
So the licenses you referenced are in a different census tract than this development. So the way ABC limits licenses is per census tract. The census tract where this project is located, they have 2 off-sale licenses, and they're only allowed 2 on sale per ABC. However, there could be a finding of public convenience and necessity to add these licenses per.
What is the public convenience and necessity to not cross the street? It may be, what I'm trying to visualize this. The tract allows, we're making a variance to allow 4 instead of 2. I think 2's enough.
So it's not a variance, it's a finding of public convenience and necessity. It's a separate finding.
Public necessity, can you define that for me?
Typically, sir, what happens, the reason ABC has these findings of public convenience and necessity is in situations like this, where you have a grocery store that has the convenience of serving alcohol. So if somebody goes, let's say, to Target, rather than saying, I can't buy my alcohol here, now I've got to go across the street and buy it elsewhere, it's a convenience for them to be able to get it there and then. In other words, shopping for their items there, plus being able to purchase alcohol. That's their public convenience. So when we look at the public convenience and necessity, we're looking at the actual use. In this case, it's a grocery store or a retail store that happens to sell alcohol. It'd be quite different if it was, let's say, a bar or a nightclub where there really wouldn't be any necessity to go there. You know, you're not buying anything else. So that's really the intent of cities being able to make that finding of public convenience and necessity.
I understand what you're saying, but as a resident, if I know that that grocery store doesn't sell liquor, then I'll go across the street if I really want it. It just seems the regulation or ABC saying you can have 2, but if you can justify public necessity and convenience, we'll let you make that decision and add more. So who's getting the original 2 in that development? Is it not the Target and potentially Sprouts?
It would be, in this situation, likely both that would be able to sell the alcohol. But without that public convenience and necessity, we would be saying that neither of these stores would be able to have that service.
Well, we're already allowing, ABC's already allowing 2. The developer wants 4. So 2, one goes to Sprouts, one goes to Target. Let's assume that's correct. Then we have proposed other retailers yet to be identified that would then be allowed to apply for those liquor licenses that may or may not be wanted.
2 existing? Okay.
So there's already 2 existing licenses, which I think was included as an attachment to the staff report. So that's why with these additional licenses, it would need the public convenience and necessity.
Where are those 2?
Let me look at the staff report.
Are those the ones, Melody, within the same census tract, just across the street?
The ones across the street are under a separate census tract. And if I recall, it's one of the clubhouses on the communities that has a license, I think.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
So the question that was asked by staff was, so the north ones were on a separate census tract. So ABC, with their over-concentration, doesn't take those into consideration for the oversaturation of this property. This one's on a separate census tract. And there are 2 existing off-sale licenses.
For this tract,
Census tract, not this property.
I understand.
Yeah.
Where are those 2, is what I'm asking.
From what I recall, just from memory, it was one of the community's clubhouses that had Morongo and one other had a liquor license.
I believe that's 1906, the restaurant.
So the golf course has one of the existing licenses,
Yes.
So the golf course, the Oak Valley Golf Course is the same census tract as this one. That's one, and then would the other one be the Holiday Inn?
No, the Holiday Inn is on the northern census tract.
So which is the second Melody? You said Morongo? Okay.
Morongo as in Tuckwit?
Correct.
You're telling me that the same census tract that Tuckwit Golf Course is at is the same as this project?
Correct. It extended to the west, the census tract.
Well, that's actually southeast,
Or
but sorry. Okay, you answered my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think a couple of questions from me. I think commissioners asked some of my concerns on the variances, but going back to the development agreement and the digital sign, I don't know if it's part of this process here, but would that be something where the city would be able to have advertising on that billboard on an ongoing basis?
That would be the idea, that the city could share in the advertising, sir, for public reasons. That's correct. And the applicant has shared that as a possibility, something that they would do. But again, this is something that we would do as a separate project when it comes in. We can discuss those terms at that point.
I have another question.
Sure. Go ahead, Commissioner Goldblum.
I want to go back to the liquor thing, the alcohol. If the Tuckwit is in the same census tract, what is Stater Brothers? That is closer to this facility off in that area? I'm curious.
the Stater Brothers on Cherry Valley.
Right.
So
Is it a
so
different one?
that's also a separate census tract in,
Okay.
in the city of Calumet as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
My last question, and I know we talked a lot about the traffic improvements along Oak Valley, but are there anything we can speak to for the actual interchange itself? Is there any coordination that's going to need to happen there with Caltrans or any additional improvements?
The I-10 Oak Valley Parkway Interchange project is a TUMF WRCOG project, and the project is required to pay a TUMF fee towards that, towards those improvements.
Do you have a time frame on that project by chance?
I do, I had one more comment for staff. On the improvements on Desert Lawn, putting in a signal there, I would suggest coordinating that with the other signals that are crossing the freeway. So that would alleviate tremendous amount of backup. If one turns green, that's red, so you have a green, so you can get in line for the one lane passing, crossing over the freeway. It'd be great if they were synced together.
We'll have Mr. Vestal first refer to Mr. Southard's comment, then Mr. Coblin's.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So for the timing, it is a large interchange. We're currently in the PAED phase, which is like preliminary engineering. So it is probably a 10-year project. With respect to, I'm sorry, can you, the signal timing.
Signal timing, you're dealing with one lane each direction crossing over the freeway. So I'm just suggesting that you put a signal in on Desert Lawn, but you're gonna have another signal at the entrance to cross over the freeway, which is allowing for people to turn right going east, and that backs it up normally. So if the lights are not synced together, you're gonna have even more backup. So I would suggest engineering look at that so the synchronization is there to provide an even flow. Or
Sure.
I shouldn't say even, a smooth flow.
Yeah, I
That's
think synchronization will be a key factor in finding that last bit of efficiency throughout the city of Beaumont, so
Okay.
in
It
this
was a
particular
suggestion just to
area.
keep it in mind, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to public hearing, and I will open the public hearing at 7 p.m. Do we have any requests to speak?
I have no written requests and no emails. Benny, do we have any callers on the line?
No callers.
Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7 p.m. And I'll turn it back to the commission for comments or a motion.
I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move that we hold a public hearing to consider request for approval of a plot plan PP 2024-0059, sign program plan 2024-0157, variance V 2024-0019, and V 2025-0031.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Can we discuss this at this point?
There can be discussion before the roll call.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
I'd be much more comfortable if the recommendation deleted the sign program portion. I don't see that there's been any justification for that, any indication that the project would fail without that sign. There's been multiple discussions as to whether or not we wanted to approve those kinds of signs, and we've turned it down in other situations. And to say, let's go ahead and approve the sign program as it is with that electronic sign, I think that flies in the face of the work that's been done before. I really want to see this project go forward, but I think we're making some exceptions and some variances based on a statement by the developer that they've looked at the finances and they have to have this much in order to make it work. I don't think we've seen any justification, but there's a definite value to our citizenship of the city, and I don't have a problem with varying the parking lot, varying the open space. But the sign program, I really have a problem with that, though we've turned it down multiple times for multiple developers. And now suddenly, it's kind of like the flames to our feet approve this or we're not going to do it. It just doesn't seem to make sense.
Sir, just for clarification, you're referring to the portion of the development agreement with the LED freeway sign, correct? Not the sign program itself?
Correct, just the LED sign. And what I'd request is in our recommendation is that if we make a recommendation that we approve it, but I think that recommendation would be that it prohibit any electronic sign.
And the reason I want to be clear is because the sign program right now does not have the freeway LED sign. You'd have to modify the sign program later to bring that back. The LED sign is within the development agreement. So your recommendation, or what you're proposing, is that it be removed from the development agreement.
Okay, okay. So now what I'd like to see the recommendation say is that we approve what's here, but we recommend to the city council that it not allow an electronic sign,
Okay,
period.
understood.
I think I'm going to disagree with you on that, Commissioner Cooley. I think that a project of this size and scope, and I know the staff's worked really hard on this development agreement, so I think I'm of mind to push this to City Council with the recommendation that the development agreement be made in whole. But that's just me. I'll defer to my other commissioners up here.
Chair and Commissioners, our economic development consultants have some additional information that might help with this. If we can give them the floor on that.
Just to address your comment, Commissioner Cooley, we did very early on perform a financial analysis of this project, the real estate project. We hired a consultant that specializes in looking at developer pro formas, considering the rents, the cost of construction, and all of these components, the 6 million contribution, the digital display board. I think there's also some electronic or fueling stations, electric fueling stations on the site. They all were part of the financing program for this project. And the basic conclusion of that report was that the project did not meet normal rates of return thresholds, even with these supplemental sources of revenue. So it was sort of, but for the assistance from the city, this project would probably not go forward. So we were sensitive to your inquiry as to why we're making these concessions. And part of that was to help make this project become financially feasible.
Thank you for that. I would have liked to have seen that in the information that was given to us. That makes a difference in how I perceive it.
How does that address the digital sign? That is only projected at this point, not, you know what I mean? It's not a formal request at this point, it's conceptual. But are you anticipating revenue to the city from that, or increased revenue to the project noticeably and verifiable?
It is a proposal from the developer at this point. There's no guarantee, as we pointed out, that they're going to get permission to build, either from you or from Caltrans or other agencies with jurisdiction. But if they are successful in getting all the entitlements to build it, it is an additional income stream to help support the project economics. So,
Okay.
Unfortunately, we've had some informal conversations about sharing in the revenue stream, but you may recall in my presentation, I said there's one safe harbor in avoiding prevailing wages on the project, and that is you're only reimbursing them for the actual costs of the public improvements. And there's one proviso that says, and you cannot have a proprietary interest in the project. And unfortunately, the attorneys have deemed the relationship, a sharing relationship on the sign as possibly being a proprietary interest, which would trigger a prevailing wage burden on all of the improvements. So in exchange for a very limited revenue stream to the city, you would burden the developer with perhaps $10 million of additional costs. So we still need further conversations on that, but that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question, and I go back to my original statement was, if I know Caltrans can be very difficult. I've dealt with Caltrans, so I bless you for that. Good luck. Can we require that Caltrans approval be received prior to taking a second look? Because ultimately, it will be Caltrans who will make that determination whether they're going to issue the permit or not, correct?
That is correct, sir. Ultimately, it will be up to Caltrans. However, what we don't want to do is delay our process, because if it takes Caltrans a year and then all of a sudden they have to start with ours, it's going to be another 2 to 3 months.
No, where I was going to go with this is if we give them the approval and Caltrans says no, then, and I will touch on the development agreement a little bit. I want to make sure we're held harmless for that first off, which it sounds like we are held harmless on that.
Yes.
But that way we alleviate the concerns we have right here about an illuminated sign. And could we also not, well, no, we couldn't go concurrently. So that's what I would request, or at least some sort of justification that they think that Caltrans will approve that sign and it won't be an illumination problem for people on the freeway. That's the only other thing I can think of.
Can I speak?
Sure.
I think it's worth mentioning that the sign is designed as a multifaceted sign. Yes, there is electronic advertising, a component of it, and we're happy to include city announcements as we've discussed. But it's also a city gateway sign. It definitely calls out the city of Beaumont, has a city of Beaumont logos. I think it's designed really well to be a multifaceted sign. It's for the shopping center. It's a gateway sign on the west end of the city of Beaumont, and it kind of accomplishes several things there. Regard to Caltrans, there is an interim step that we're working on submitting to Caltrans to get their initial buy-off, and in good faith, I'll go ahead and do that. And I don't think that will take the 3 months of time that it will take us to get back in this room with you all and discuss the sign again. So we should have some initial feedback, at the very least, from Caltrans prior to coming back to discuss the LED freeway sign.
Okay, that work? So do I have to modify my motion, or will it stand?
I think we have a motion and a second, right? So we can do a roll call?
Correct. Unless you would like to modify your motion, you have an option to.
No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
I would just answer with the modifications to the conditions of approval that Melody had proposed.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so let me read the whole thing again. Sorry about that. So I move that, given with the modifications that Melody has produced, that we approve, let me get back to that, sorry.
You don't have to state
Okay.
the entire, you can just say with modifications as presented.
Okay, with modifications as presented by staff.
And I'll second that, again.
And we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Cooley?
Yes.
Commissioner Copeland?
Yes.
Commissioner Cueva?
Yay.
Chairman Southern?
Yes. Okay, that item passes. And we'll moves us on to staff comments.
No comments from staff? No comments from staff, sir.
Well, welcome back, Commissioner Smith. And do we have any comments from the commissioners here? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 7:12 PM.